All right. Peace and greetings, YouTubers. So, Aretha Franklin, where do we begin? My goodness. So, initially, when it was announced that she had passed, I was actually in New York. I wasn't in DC, so I couldn't get to my camera fast enough and share my 2 cents here. But I'm here now. But I'm kind of glad that I was in New York because it was the most interesting place to be. Because literally, I'm not going to say that the city stopped, but I'm going to say that the city transitioned into a place of gratitude where literally on every corner you just heard Aretha music playing. Every vendor that was selling hot dogs or something with a radio, you heard Aretha playing. Every taxi cab, every city service worker with a truck, you heard Aretha Franklin playing. All of the tourist attractions, Aretha this, Aretha that. You walk past a lot of the buildings, they had Aretha on the marquee everywhere. I was like, wow, what a great place to be for an event. And with this, as sad as it is that she's passed, it feels different. It doesn't feel like a punch in the gut. To me, watching everything happen as of right now, I feel it's more so we witnessed, a legendary journey transition into an iconic legacy before our eyes. And the cool thing about Aretha is because she transcends so many generations, and because she literally is the soundtrack to everybody's life at some point, there's just always that example of gratitude and that era of just euphoria people are always going to get when they just think of her music. And so I think that's a good way to go out. You know what I mean? It's sad that she's passed, but she lived pretty much a full life. I'm not going to try to compare and contrast to other celebrities, but what makes it different with her is that because we pretty much got to watch her make it into old age and somewhat gracefully bow out, as opposed to just abruptly, lose her life at the age of 41 or 59 or whatever age, because there's so many celebrities that die so young. We pretty much got to see Aretha for as long as Aretha was here, because she never stopped entertaining. She was still touring up until the point that, she got too sick to perform. Aretha was always on the go, always, doing somebody's tribute, doing somebody's concert tour, booking somebody's event, always in the media doing something. That was just kind of her thing. My earliest memories of Aretha, to be honest, are not good ones, because if you grew up in a household like mine, Saturday mornings, if you heard the loud music playing, that meant it was time to clean up. And a lot of times it was Aretha and Patti playing. My mother loved both of those two singers, especially Patti, but she really loved Aretha. I remember she had that Aretha's, it was like a greatest hits double disc. I think it's the one that's currently #1 on iTunes right now. It kind of has like that orange cover. My mom would play that thing. Like you remember them big old 5 disc changers? Like she would have the 2 double discs from that in there. She'd have Patti LaBelle's Burning album. And then she would have Luther's Power of Love album. And then I want to say Lisa Fisher's Project. And them 5 would be in circulation. And like it would be on shuffle. And I mean, so my earliest memories weren't that great, because every time I heard Aretha, I just automatically associated it with cleaning the house. But over time, those songs became like timestamps in my childhood. I'm like, oh, I remember, what I was doing. And it would be the most interesting thing, because I'd be in my room, picking up the Legos or something off the floor. And in the background, it is playing Ain't No Way or something. And I'm 5 or 6. And, Aretha is singing all these songs to me about relationships and stuff I really am too young to understand. But indirectly, her voice just became the standard of how I thought all entertainers were supposed to sound. The same with somebody like Whitney Houston. Like growing up, and I've said this before with entertainers in general, there's just certain entertainers and vocalists and performers who I grew up on, and automatically I associate them with the standard of how everybody who's out today is supposed to be, which is probably why I'm so critical of a lot of entertainers. But it is what it is. And so, I think people should just really look into the fact that Aretha was one of a kind. Be grateful that in this lifetime you got to live while she was here. That's kind of something that other people will not get to experience. You know what I mean? Kind of like the same way we have these kids who have been brought up and they never got to experience growing up with a Michael Jackson or Whitney Houston or Prince or Natalie Cole or Donna Summer. Well, hell, I barely made it for Donna Summer, but you know what I mean? Like it's just time. That's the one thing that happens as you get old. Everybody has a reservation at the cemetery, unfortunately. So it's kind of all about, just living your best life while you're here. And I think Aretha did that. I think Aretha was always unapologetically herself. And when you just look at how long her career lasted and how she was able to constantly transition and what I want to say, reinvent herself, she was, man, that's a tough loss. But, I don't think she's ever going to be forgotten. You know what I mean? Like, I think her legacy is just that strong. It will carry through. And so I already talked about my favorite song in the other video, which is Skylark. Like I said before, it's one of her earliest songs. It's before, the mid-60s when Aretha really popped off. This is, earlier. Because if you remember, Aretha had pretty much a 10-year span where she wasn't really catching on. She was highly respected. She was a great attraction as far as bringing in numbers for touring and everything, but on the chart, she wasn't really doing what she could have done at the time. But Skylark, I think, is just this really great song, and it's a remake, by the way, too. And that was the thing about Aretha in remakes. Like, once she remade a song, it became hers. No ifs, ands, or buts. It's kind of like Respect. Everybody knows Respect, but it was an Otis Redding song. You know, Otis came out with his in 64. She came out with hers in 67. But you know what I found interesting about that song? If you look at the time period in which her version came out, this is 1967. And you just have to listen to the delivery of how she presents the song and what she's singing about. She's pretty much telling her man, you're going to respect me, you know, when I come home, this, that, and the third. And you have to think about that time period. This is a time period where, as far as gender roles, pretty much, please don't take offense to this, but as a woman, depending on the household you were in, your job was to come home, cook, shut up, and stay out of the way. Because the husband did all the work. You were supposed to just cook and clean and take care of the kids and know your place. And so a song like Respect, in my opinion, even though I wasn't around for it to come out, I'm sure that was a song that empowered a whole lot of women who were like, wait a minute, you're not about to just be coming here disrespecting me in my house, and I done cooked and cleaned and did all this, and I'm still going to work. Because this is also the time period where you had a lot of women starting to go into the workforce. So it wasn't going to always just be the same thing with the stay-at-home moms. Now you have women who are working, you know what I mean, and doing everything they need to do. And they're like, listen, I'm working just like you, so you're not about to expect me to have dinner on the stove when I got off of work. And, you know, it's a 2-income household, so we need to make this a 50-50. I can cook dinner on Monday, Wednesday, Friday. You need to at least take Tuesday and Thursday. Respect me when I come home. You know what I mean? And so that was always just an interesting thing. I always found that revolutionary. So people always give a lot of other female entertainers a lot of credit as far as, you know, the liberation of womanhood and everything like that. But I think Aretha plays a huge role into that. Even if it wasn't her song, she took it and made it hers. And pretty much the entire dynamic and the meaning of the song changed. You know, I remember watching VH1 way back in the day, and they had this episode. I don't know what it was. It might have been like the greatest songs of all time or something. And so they always compared Gloria Gaynor's, was it Gloria Gaynor? Who sings I Will Survive? That wasn't Gloria Gaynor, was it? I got the names mixed up. But forgive me, whoever it is who sings I Will Survive versus Aretha Franklin's Respect. And they're always saying that's the contrast that you can always find interesting. So the person who was singing I Will Survive was kind of like, okay, you left me, but I'll make it, I'll be okay. But as opposed to Respect, it's kind of like, okay, now he done came back to the house. Oh, so you want to come back, huh? Well, let me tell you what's about to happen when you come back. This time you're going to respect me in my house. So, interesting. I never got to see Aretha on tour, but I did get to see her perform live twice. Fortunately, because I always used to go to BET Honors. And so I went when she gave a tribute to Stevie Wonder, and I was also there when they gave her own tribute, and then she performed at her. So it's kind of like, okay, I did get to kind of see Aretha live twice. And of course, they were great performances. Aretha, what I found funny at the second one, when it was her tribute, she performed for like 20 minutes. Like, I think the performance was only supposed to be about 5 or 6 minutes, but she performed, and she took the mic. You know, she was walking around, she was talking to all the people in the audience. I remember Ice Cube was in the audience, and she called him Ice-T on accident, and everything like that. And she was just talking about the industry and this, that, and third. Just literally, you felt like you were really at her own concert tour. She took that entire event, and pretty much that specific BET Honors that year was pretty much the Aretha show. She took it over, it was hers. And so that was just interesting. Aretha always entertained me because she was so unapologetically herself. You know what I mean? Like, if she always did everything in cash, there was not going to be direct deposit. When she did these concerts and everything, have her money up front and she not coming on stage. That's why you always saw her with the purse. You know, she would take her purse to the red carpet, take her purse on the stage, sit it on the piano, then going out there and sing everybody under a table. Like that, she just gives you that whole vibe of like one of those, that favorite aunt or like grandmother that you got. You know what I mean? God, as far as the music, her catalog is so huge. It's hard to really dig into, you know, what her best albums are. I really think, you know, a lot of people would probably say one of her best albums is the Amazing Grace album. My favorite track on that was Holy Holy, which was also a remake because it was a Marvin Gaye song. But the delivery of that is, God, it's an amazing delivery. Like that's my favorite track on the album. That and How I Got Over, and what is it? You'll Never Be Alone. Those are really, really good. I have the original vinyl of that. Like, one of the best gifts my father could have gave me was he gave me all of his vinyls when I was probably 13, 14. I mean, he just had boxes full of vinyls. And so I remember I found that one in there and a lot of her other records, and pretty much a lot of records from the 60s and the 70s were in there. And so the vinyl is different from the digital version that's out. Like, I think the digital version that's out of the Amazing Grace album, there's bits and pieces that have been taken out. I don't know what they did to it, but Yeah, so if you can find like the original vinyl, I think you'll like that a lot more than the digital version. Um, Holy Holy is a great one. I liked Hurts Like Hell off the Way Into Excel soundtrack. That was a great way for her to still be Aretha, be current. At the time, it was 95, 96, and she was already a good 30, 40 years into her career and was still, super relevant. I always enjoyed that song. I enjoyed her collaborations with Luther Vandross. Jump to It was a great one. And I mean, there's just so many. God, you could name them all day. But she, and the thing about it, I don't think we realize how much of a pioneer she was, because you have to think she came out at the days of Sarah Vaughan and Dinah Washington. This is the same woman who performed at Martin Luther King's funeral and performed at Obama's inauguration. And somebody on Twitter, I don't know who it was, so please forgive me if I'm using your content and forgot your name, but they said something so brilliant where it was like literally Aretha was the bridge between 2 points in history, singing at Martin Luther King's funeral and the inauguration of Obama. Never mind what your politics are and everything like that. You just have to think this woman has really lived a good life and has been present for a lot and has been a cultural icon and a staple in pop culture for decades upon decades upon decades. Because me, I'm not even, by the time I was born, to be honest, Aretha's prime had kind of come and gone. But she was still, a legacy act and still a legend. And for me to be this hype about her, it just goes to show that her legacy carries on. As far as tributes, because I know the VMAs are coming on, I don't have high expectations for the VMAs, but we'll see what happens. To be honest, there's no way you can possibly give Aretha a just tribute in a 15-minute performance. I think what needs to happen, they need to literally just have a separate special on TV, maybe that airs in a week or 2 or 3, like a 2-hour special, and do a tribute that way. Because there's no matter what any awards show does within the next year, if it's under 10 minutes, people are going to complain. People are going to complain about who they, bring out there to perform. And with MTV, they're going to, do things that fit within the scope of who they're marketing to. So I don't know who they're going to bring. If they're going to do an Aretha tribute, I'm sure they'll probably go find Jennifer Hudson, and I don't even think MTV knows who Fantasia is, to be honest, the way that they do. But I mean, there's just so many great vocalists out there. I just think they need to have a totally separate tribute. So I mean, they can do a little something real quick for the VMAs, but I think since Viacom owns BET and MTV and CBS and VH1, I think Viacom should just spearhead an Aretha tribute and air it on all 4 networks on like a certain day for 2 or 3 hours, and let it be that way, because there's just no way to give justice to Aretha Franklin in a VMA tribute or a BET Awards tribute. Nothing against BET Awards, but just Aretha deserves more than 15 minutes. That's all I'm saying. She is your favorite vocalist. Okay, so Whitney was always my favorite vocalist, and who was hers? Aretha and everybody else like that. So it just, the legacy that she's carried just goes through so many generations. You got to really give her flowers. Y'all got to really go all out. You just can't half do it for Aretha. Goodness. What else was I gonna say? I guess the last thing, I think I have 2. I do, yeah. So, because you guys are always asking about the books, I do have 2 Aretha books up here. This one is okay. This one is, if you like the very nice cookie cutter, beautiful story of Aretha, that one's cool. Personally, my favorite though, I really enjoyed this version. This was the David Ritz one. Now, it was kind of low-key, unofficial, and unauthorized, but the reason I like this one is because they go into detail about all of the recording sessions. Yeah, there's some gossip and stuff in there, but I wasn't even impressed about that. It was the details in the recording sessions and how she was so instrumental, which was the word I was trying to use in my last video. So yes, that's the word I was using, y'all, that y'all kept asking me about because I couldn't get it out. She was so instrumental in her own, creative process as far as, arranging the music, arranging the vocals, going back and saying, well, if I don't like this, we're going to come back and we're going to do this. And you have to think, like, Aretha comes, one second, y'all. She comes from an era where a lot of people used to record their songs in 2 or 3 takes. You didn't get the luxury of having Pro Tools, and if you hit a bad note, you could pause it right there and go back 10 seconds and redo that note, or try to piece together a note and blend it together. No, you used to have to sit there with the live session band and do the whole song, and if you messed up, everybody got to start over. And so she comes out of that era. And the coolest thing is when she would get on stage, she'd give you more than what you got in the recording. And it's one of the reasons why, like at my center, I have this wall, and on this wall are a bunch of prominent African American and prominent black figures and people in the diaspora who I feel every child should grow up knowing or just being familiar with. And so of course she was on there, but on that wall was like her, there were astronauts, there were, people that worked in STEM, there were other entertainers, there were writers, there were, business moguls. And so of course she was right on that wall. So it's kind of cool. So Because I have 5 and 6 year olds at my center running around who know who Aretha Franklin is. That's kind of a cool thing. Just I was doing my part as far as pushing the legacy into the next generation. So yes, Aretha will be missed, but I don't think she'll be forgotten. She just her hands were too heavy in the industry for it. You know what I mean? She's everybody's favorite artist to some extent. Whether everything from her politics, everything from her doing all the community work, all the charity events. And don't forget, she used to throw them really big birthday parties. She used to always have a huge party for herself. That's the one thing. She liked to celebrate herself too, so I'm not knocking her. Get it. I ain't mad at you, Aretha. But there's just so much that she's contributed to. It's like, God, how do you even align or try to address everything? You go through the internet and dig up all the albums she has. Because remember, she used to come out with an album like every 9 months. So she has so much material. I haven't even heard it all. But that is my 2 cents on Aretha. Goodness. If I had an album to recommend, I'm going to step off the radar really quick. Everybody gasses up Aretha's stuff from the 80s and back. I really enjoyed her So Damn Happy album. It came out, I think, in 2002, 2003. It's actually a really, really good album. Check that album out. My favorite song on that album was Holding On. It's like a duet with Mary J. Blige. And she has another song called like Wonderful. I think it opens the album. Great song, great material. And her voice was always like still intact even at the age that she was at when she recorded that album. So yeah, that's my 2 cents. Share your 2 cents, your best memories about Aretha. And Aretha, until next time. All right.